Gentlemen, welcome to the decision meeting for traffic and transportation. Do we have any apologies?
Councillor Bosher sent his apologies.
Councillor Bosher has become a grandfather today, so over the link, congratulations, Councillor Bosher. I haven't heard anything from Councillor Chowdhury, but he's possibly late. I'm Lynn Stagg, Cabinet Member. Go around the table.
Joan Moore-Smith, Democratic Services.
Pam Turton, Assistant Director of Portsmouth City Council. Michelle Love, Safer Travel Manager, Portsmouth City Council.
Wayne Layton, Finance Manager, Portsmouth City Council.
Thank you all. Declarations of members' interest. I have no interest whatsoever in anything. So should we start with item number 1, which is vehicle crossover policy, and who's introducing that? Is it Michelle? Thank you, Michelle.
So we have a vehicle crossover policy in existence already, and the last time it was reviewed was January 2010, so it was in need of a review. In the intervening 9 years since it was obviously reviewed the last time, the parking within the city, we've obviously experiencing increasing problems with parking in the city. So it was felt that the entire policy needed to be reviewed to ensure that there was fairness and clarity, and also because we offer an appeals process, which is not statutory, it's discretionary, so we have decided to do this. And the appeals process was becoming very long and drawn out as people took the appeal. If the appeal didn't go in their favour, it became a corporate complaint and so on. So it was felt that we needed clarity of where the appeals process stopped in order to ensure that people were given a fair opportunity to appeal, but that there was a specific end point where the decision wouldn't change. Do you want me to run through the changes to the policy? Yeah, I'll do it. I'll be brief. Yeah. So very briefly, the main changes to the policy are the fact that we offer 2 types of parking. One is to drive straight on and off, and one is to make a parallel movement, so your vehicle is parked parallel to your property. When the new parking standards came out, it was recommended that actually parallel parking adjacent to a property is not considered safe because of the number of vehicle movements backwards and forwards across the footway. So we did research around surrounding authorities to find out what they did, and so within our new policy we've increased the amount of space that you need for parallel parking from a 6 metre width of available space on your property to 7.2. This will allow a vehicle to drive fully on and off without making multiple movements on the footway, which is obviously where we want the pedestrians to be. And that works in with our active travel agenda and things like that to ensure that we're making it as safe as possible for people to walk. The next main change is the fact that there is now a regulation surrounding sustainable urban drainage. So we're basically saying that if you can prove that the material that you put in is permeable and will take away the same amount of water from the highway as a grass verge would, then we will allow the crossing to go ahead. Before we didn't do that because it was usually constructed of tarmac, which meant that water then flowed onto the road, and in winter if this froze, this would then become a hazard of ice. So now we can put in materials that actually soak in the water. As I said, the appeals process has been formalised so that they will receive a response to their appeal within 10 working days, and that the appeal will be carried out within a further 20 working days. The appeal will be carried out by officers within the transport side of the regeneration service. It will be signed off by either myself or Steve Flynn, who's within the network management team. And once that appeal has been signed off, that decision will be considered as final. The only other changes are to do with the widths of access roads to garages at the rear of the property, because a lot of the garages that were constructed were in the 1950s, cars were a lot narrower, and so they don't really count as garages anymore. So obviously the rest of the document is more or less the same, and it is obviously available. It will be available on the website for residents to go through. So it's recommended that the new policy is approved, taking into account the changes that we've made to the actual criteria.
Thank you, Michelle. I've got 2 questions. One is, with existing parking spaces in forecourts, if they're not made of permeable material, is there any retrospective introducing of that permeable material, or is it too late?
So if it's within a private dwelling, that's dealt with by planning because it's under the general permitted development order. So there's already conditions in place to ensure that what you put in is permeable. So the majority of driveways have monoblocks, or they have a permeable substructure to them. And that's dealt with through the planning side of it as opposed to through the transportation side of it. And then for us on the public highway, we are now saying you need a permeable material.
But it doesn't have any retrospective.
But there's no, we can't do anything retrospectively.
Right, that's what I was going to ask, because I know of a few cases where people have put in driveways themselves without permission, and I don't know if the material they've used is permeable. And it's a concern because, I mean, the city is liable to flooding to different degrees right across the city, so there's nothing can be done about that.
If they put it, so we hold a record of everybody who has been given permission for driveways, and if there are dropped curbs there that haven't been given permission, because we've had a policy in place since 2005, so we do have the records. If one is constructed without permission, then it will be COLAS that deals with that, because you have to get a streetworks notice in order to excavate the highway, and if you don't get a streetworks notice to excavate the highway, then you're issued with a penalty notice under the New Roads and Streetworks Act, which COLAS deal with. So, and then they can ask for the highway to be reinstated to the original condition at the cost of whoever did that. So if that happened, then that would be dealt with through that process.
Thank you. Before I go on, welcome Councillor Chowdhury. Do you have any interest to declare?
No.
Thank you. We're on item number, well, the first item about crossovers. Okay. My other question is on page 8. I'm assuming that this is what it means. If the tree has to be removed, and it says the applicant will be required to pay the monetary value of the tree before the crossover can be constructed. That is to replace that tree somewhere else, is it? So it's not just cutting a tree and forgetting about it and somebody pocketing the money, but it's about replacing the tree.
Yeah, so under the terms of the contract, COLAS are responsible for maintaining street trees. We have a register called a Borotrack, which is the register of street trees. We have 8,000 street trees, and it's a contractual condition that we have 8,000 street trees at the end of every contractual year. We have what they call tree pits, so they're pre-constructed so that they don't interfere with the utilities. There are 84 spare tree pits within the city, so if you have to have a tree removed to construct your crossover, you will be required to pay for the removal of that tree and the new tree that will go into one of the spare tree pits that we have around the city.
Oh, right, that's interesting. I didn't know that. That's very useful to know. Thank you very much. Yeah, that gives me ammunition in many circumstances. Okay, thank you.
I can reel this off in my sleeve.
Right, very good. I personally think this. What about you, Councillor Chowdhury? Do you think this is a sensible?
Yeah, I think it is right things and new things. It is COLA is responsible for 8,000 trees. It is good for us to deal on it. There is a lot of trees making problem in the city.
That's just street trees.
Yeah.
There are 100. I think there's 32,000 trees, but PCC look after the majority of them, and COLAS look after 8,000 street trees.
5,000 by city council. 5,000 trees by city council.
No, we have, as a city council, we have 32,000 trees, and they are within parks and on the common and, other areas. And of those 32,000, 8,000 are actually planted on street, and they are COLAS's responsibility.
Thank you.
What about the recommendation for this particular one, that we approve the revision of the provision of vehicle access to the front of houses?
I think I'm okay for the recommendation.
Lovely, thank you. I've got one. It's something that occurred to me, and it's following the lady who appealed against a refusal to have a crossover approved. She bought the house because around her were houses which had already had the crossovers. This is something I think that should go to all estate agents, so that I mean, even in a sort of a brief form, just to let people know that if they buy these houses, they can't then go and expect to have a drop curb if the conditions do not, if the measurements are not right, etc.
Yeah, I agree. Luckily, my husband's an estate agent, so I will find out where we can. They do have like regional, forums of estate agents, and it is within Portsmouth. If you have off-street parking, it generally increases the value of your house by about £20,000, £10,000 to £20,000. But yeah, we can certainly contact them and ask that they don't put potential for off-road parking on something that is the size of a postage stamp, because we will not be able to approve it.
No, because there's several I know of, on my wanderings around the city, which obviously have gone in before any limitations were placed. And I mean, they are potentially very dangerous. Some just off the main road, Copner Road, for example, when I'm travelling down there. So it would be useful, because people are forewarned then, so there's no comeback if they then appeal against it. So, right, I'm happy to approve this. I think it's very good. Thank you. So the next item is, when I get there, near-miss reporting pilot review. Ian, you've got a deputation, I know, for this. Who was presenting this again? Is it Michelle again? Would you like to present it first of all, and then Ian, you can do a deputation afterwards, if that's all right?
So we developed the near-miss reporting app in-house. So it's been developed with PCCIT, and we're coming to Traffic and Transportation today to ask for the continuation of it, and also to approve an extension to include pedestrian near misses, and that will be implemented within the next financial year, 2019-2020. The idea of the near miss is that obviously while we receive casualty statistics from Hampshire Constabulary of actual cyclist collisions, a lot happens that we're not aware of on the network because they're not reported, because it is a near miss. Nothing actually happened. So this is a self-reporting tool where you can, there is a link on the Portsmouth City Council website, and you can put in whatever happened, whether it be a close pass with a vehicle or an enormous pothole, or signage that is incomplete or inadequate, and that will then show up on a map. The map is then monitored by the Road Safer Travel Team, the Road Safety Part of the Safer Travel Team, and we can divide it into different areas. So, for instance, anything that is maintenance that we can put forward to COLAS, our contractors, because it is their liability, we do so. If there is a cluster of reports about the same type of behaviour, we can look at a behavioural change campaign, for instance. Working with Hampshire Constabulary on the close pass campaigns and things like that, or we can collate the data to put forward mandates for funding for the following financial year for civil engineering schemes that could alleviate some of the problems. So yeah, the pilot was very successful. It was on the front page of the news last night, so that was very timely. And it has been used a lot. It's very popular. We're getting a lot of quality data and information from it that we can use for our reporting, and obviously it helps that the public are our eyes and ears in that respect, because obviously we can't cover the whole city all of the time. So yeah, basically the recommendation is we continue with that, and we go back to our IT to add on the part of the app that is pedestrians, and we will follow the same process, so that because obviously when you report it, we can't do anything straight away, but we are recognising that we are aware of it, and that we are collating the data and identifying the key sites where things do need to be changed through one part or another. So that is how we are recognising our liability, through either implementing civil engineering schemes, behavioural change schemes, or maintenance.
Thank you. Ian, do you want to introduce yourself first of all, and then do your deputation?
I'm Ian Saunders, I'm the chair of Portsmouth Cycle Forum. Portsmouth Cycle Forum are happy that the near-miss reporting tool for cyclists was implemented a year ago after we discussed our concerns following the fatal accident of Tim Atkins along the Eastern Road in June 2017, and also Andy Reeve, who was seriously injured at an accident on the Fratton Bridge roundabout 24 hours before Tim's accident. Following these high-profile accidents, we received a number of messages, either directly or via social media, from both members and the public stating they had also been involved in accidents or near misses throughout the city, but had not reported them as they had not resulted in injury. There was an obvious concentration of them on the two locations in the news, which highlighted that actual incidents could be 4 or 5 times higher than those made by the Stats 19 data from the police logs. This would therefore show that, but for a bit of luck or fortune, the Portsmouth cycling casualty data could be considerably worse than the ignominious position it already held towards the top of the country statistics. The Council's response was to set up a trial version of the near-miss reporting tool that has now had its data examined in the report being discussed today. PCF has been fully supportive in ensuring that awareness of the tool is in the public domain, with information about it being distributed via our members, social media channels and meetings. I also undertook a TV interview with BBC South about its launch. The Facebook post we created of the Portsmouth news story of the report this week has already reached 2,500 people in the couple of days it has been up, some of whom were not aware the tool existed and have asked for more information. Therefore, we are equally supportive of the scheme being made permanent, as well as being extended to pedestrians being able to report near misses. Feedback from our members has been generally positive, although they have highlighted a few issues we would like to feed back into the process should it move forward. And these include an easier way to access the Council website. The URL is long and complicated, meaning that it is unlikely to be remembered as easily. As a result, we've created a page on our website to act as a through link directly to the reporting tool with the simpler URL of pompey.bike/report. There was a desire for members to report via the My Portsmouth app so that they could do so much quicker after the incident while the memory was fresh, rather than waiting until they next accessed the computer. They would like to better understand how the data is used to further develop schemes to improve cycling safety. The published report certainly gives us a better idea of the hotspots, so that as a forum we can develop and contribute ideas on what may be suitable. We would like to see such reports on a regular basis, particularly once the Stats 19 data is compared to the same period. They were not aware whether reporting incidents occurring outside the PCC authority area would be passed on to the relevant council. Portsmouth has a number of commuters and leisure cyclists who travel across the boundary on a regular basis. We need to ensure that cross-authority action lines up to create a consistent approach to design and implementation of cycling infrastructure. Concerned that the awareness of the reporting tool was not known wider than the immediate cycling fraternity. The data needs to be drawn from as wide a demographic as possible. This means that it needs to be distributed to the wider public than those who read council literature or our members and others engaged in local cycling organisations. The utility cyclist who uses a bike as everyday transport is likely to benefit the most from improvements, but may not engage or consider themselves part of the cycling set. This is especially important with the proposed introduction of the hire bike scheme across the city, as this may well widen the pool of regular cyclists. Members were also concerned about the ambiguity of subjective and emotive requests for information such as how deliberate the incident was or the annoyance of it to the respondent. Personally, I find these generally high, as the incidents I reported are often down to bad driving or spatial awareness, where drivers have taken a risk, for example coming out of junctions or squeezing between a cyclist and oncoming or parked vehicles, often at speed, rather than it being a genuine mistake. There is no doubt that the results show a plethora of incidents where the road conditions are not conducive to cycling and driving being done safely in close quarters. For instance, it is no surprise to see a hotspot in Nelson Ward centred on Stamshaw Road and Twyford Avenue, one-way routes where there are multiple side roads and parked vehicles on either side of the road and barely enough room to get a car past a bicycle and maintain a safe passing distance, even without considering buses or commercial vans and lorries. Meanwhile, the cycle lane gives the visual reference to drivers to expect cyclists to maintain a line in the door zone of parked cars, placing themselves at further risk. With regards to extending the tool to include pedestrians, Portsmouth Cycle Forum also support this. We are increasingly finding ourselves working with Portsmouth Friends of the Earth on active and sustainable travel issues, and they are also supportive of this extension. Locations of unsafe crossing points, narrow footways and consistent pavement parking are all issues that endanger pedestrians, and again does nothing to enable people to walk short distances rather than drive. It also fits with the themes of our A City to Share strategy launched in 2014, where we highlighted the necessity to use streets to move people rather than vehicles. We regularly receive comments about antisocial cycling of those on pavements or without lights, putting themselves and others in danger. We consider that if pedestrians are being placed in danger by cyclists, we need to discover the locations of these incidents and work out why it is occurring. Our hunch is because cyclists feel in danger by using the road or are finding their own shortcut as the cycle infrastructure is not up to standard or particularly useful for them on their journey. It may also help to identify whether shared path infrastructure across the city that mixes different users of different speeds in the same space really works. In conclusion, the trial period of the cycle near-miss reporting has probably been a success, but the data collected so far needs to be expanded upon and continued in order to give us the best indication of the what, where and how cyclists consider the safety of our roads to be, and enable us to identify the areas that need facilities addressing and improving. To encourage this, the message awareness of the tool needs to be spread wider and made easier to collect data, as well as showing what the results mean in terms of improvements on the ground. The pressing issue of congestion and air quality in the city demands that people need to switch away from their vehicles and use other sustainable forms of transport. Portsmouth Cycle Forum support this approach and are happy to help wherever we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Chowdhury, any comments you want to make? Thank you. A few things I jotted down. I think wider coverage of the WhatsApp. I do mean whatever means, because not everybody uses social media. I think pedestrians and other drivers. I mean, one thing I've been thinking of getting for ages, I must do something about it, is getting a dash cam. And I think some cyclists have also got cameras, and the helmet cameras, and that helps. Educating some drivers, but also some cyclists, because I think it's not just one or the other. I mean, the number of times I've had near misses with cyclists wearing dark clothes, no headlights, and with earphones in, and there before the grace of God go I, as far as causing an accident is concerned, which really it angers me and it upsets me as well that I could be guilty of causing an accident when in fact it wasn't my fault. Do you know what I mean? So I think in both sides, but one of our councillors who is regular, one of the Cycle Forum who's a regular cyclist, just last week reported 2 incidents just on the one road, on London Road, where he was tailgated and where he was, sort of pushed over into the pavement, by a car, and that was seemingly deliberate. And I think there are some drivers out there who just object to cyclists being on the road. So I think we need some, how, I don't know, but I think we need to educate some drivers. And what was the other thing I wanted to say? Oh, the other thing was, and I was talking to our cycle officer this afternoon about mandatory cycle lanes, because there are some cycle lanes which are potentially so dangerous. The one that I particularly notice is along Goldsmith Avenue, where you get cars and vans parked there, but also places like Twyford Avenue, which is very, very narrow, and Copner Bridge. I mean, I go over that every day, and it terrifies me when I see a cyclist in front, but cars who are actually going over the bridge, actually driving with the two left wheels in the cycle path, So I think there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done, but I think we're getting there. We may not have arrived yet, but I think it's good that we're getting there. Councillor Chowdhury.
Can I say something? Because I always work around the city. I saw this lot of bike running without safety awareness. They haven't got much head on it. They haven't got a red light. Sometimes they got earphone in the car, music going through. This is also very important. Majority of bike, they're not bothered to put the safety equipment when they're driving the bike. So we need to aware of that as well to put the awareness on the city. Whoever driving, young or old, they have to be make sure they have all this, because we haven't got a proper channel, proper road for the bike. Sometimes they have to drive bike on the pavement. Sometimes they have to go to the road and very congested. Sometimes there is narrow road, both side car parking. How can go the bike? Sometimes night time is light is there, bike man, he can't see anything who is driving bike because of the car light. So it is very important both sides, especially bike who are driver, they have to be aware of that, all the regulation for the safety for himself. That's all.
But I think the great thing about this is it's alerting us to where the hot spots are, and then we can do something about that physically anyway, making those sites safer. But I think there are some hard decisions we have to make about parking and so forth in relation to safety on the roads. So I'm very happy to agree for this to go along, and I would agree with Ian. It'd be nice to be for longer than 6 months. Because if we can get more, and particularly pedestrians feeding into it, because you see, because you're walking, you have more time to see things in detail, and therefore can report them much easier. So, thank you very much. So I'm very happy to and you're okay with that?
Could we just ask that you send your deputation so we can go through it, and then we can provide a response? Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. End of meeting.